a used car lot one time. I paid cash for this SUV, another SUV that I had. And as I was leaving this car lot, a gentleman pulled up in a nice SUV that he had just purchased. And he was making a complaint about he was losing a quart of oil a day. I thought, now what would cause that? At the time, I wasn't familiar with the rear main seal. I've slightly heard of it, but this man was telling the dealer he went to have his truck checked out, and they told him he has a rear main seal leaking. He was asking the dealer, why didn't you tell me about this? This is a major problem. And why didn't you fix it? And the dealer was saying to him, you bought this vehicle as is. I thought, oh my goodness, what is a rear main seal? It has to be expensive. I mean, this gentleman was upset, and he should have been, but not to have had the truck inspected. I ran into that problem one time. I was in a hurry, and the vehicle looked fine, so I just paid for it and said, well, I'll fix whatever's wrong with it later. No. That man complained about losing a quart of oil a day. The rest of the tour, 7 things I did or had to do to prepare to remove my transmission, replacing my rear main seal on my vehicle. This thing here with the O-ring. This wasn't that much. I think the kit was $30 with the O-ring. Number 1. Number 1, decide whether or not I want to do this. Yes, I do. Check. Number 2, where do I want to do this, or can I do this? I could have used the garage, but then I would have to go across town, and the panning had to be just right when everybody was out of the way or asleep, and moving cars out the way, so I had my space. But I thought, now, this is going to take a while, and I want to be somewhere where I'm not borrowing no one's space, and I'm not going to be disturbed. I decided to do this in a parking lot of a complex community, a apartment community in the parking lot. But I knew if I chose to do this, I had to be neat, clean, and no one, but not very many people would notice what I was doing. Actually, the only reason someone found out I was doing my transmission, the security personnel was checking at nighttime, and they happened to see my truck raised, and they were looking under, and that's the only way they knew. Otherwise, no one knew that I was taking out my transmission. Interesting. Number 3, how am I going to do this? My professor told me years ago, plan your work and work your plan. I knew I had to keep the area clean, and every time I pull off parts to put them away, wrap them up and stick them in the back of my SUV. You had to. I could not afford to have parts laying around. When I removed my exhaust, I wrapped it, stuck it in the back of my SUV. When I took off my transfer case, put it away. When I took out my drive shaft, my rear front drive shaft and my front drive shaft, put them away. And if I had to leave, I made sure there was nothing on the ground. I kept my truck washed. I would actually wash my truck. My truck was not on jacks, well, it was on jack stands, but it was just raised up. It was not, the wheels were not off the ground. It was just raised. That kept suspicion away. Some of the complexes, they don't allow you to do any mechanical work. For me to do that, drop my transmission, was amazing. Someone came around after the job was done, and I told them I changed my transmission. I'm sorry, my rear main seal. Although I had to drop my transmission, he said, "Right here?" I said, "Yes." I said, "Go to YouTube." And he did. And they were impressed. Okay, number 4. Watching all the YouTube videos possible on the subject and listening to what they say, especially when they ran into problems. I kept hearing the boats around the bell housing. There was one at the top, and I think there was one off to the left. Difficult to get to. I solved that problem before I started. I opened up my floor, a very small hole, and managed to get those bolts out first before I even got started. Get them out the way. I made sure my ratchet set, my extensions would reach these bolts, and I loosened them up. In some cases I may have taken it out, but I got them ready first, get that out the way. And there were a couple of bolts on top of my transfer case, the same thing. I cut a small opening right on top of them, easy access. Problem solving before I get started. Number 5, gathering every tool that I may need. By watching those videos, you knew that you were going to need a long extensions to reach some of these bolts that were on the side, you have to lay down. Now all this is done on my back. And by watching the videos, one mechanic said, if you're going to do this on your back, it's going to take a week. He was right. Now it didn't take all day. I may spend 12 hours here, 4 hours the next day, 6 hours the next day, another 12 hours. Added up to maybe about, I'm just estimating 30 hours within the course of a week on your back. Sometimes it rained and different things were happening, but I kept going. This job has to be done. And you're either going to have time off, you're going to have a second vehicle, you have to make sure you're going to be able to get back and forth, take care of business while you're doing this, and stand focused. Number 5. One of the main tools I needed was this transmission jack from Harbor Freight, which I did not have, and there's no way around it. And you need some type of motor. I mean, I've seen a gentleman using a motorcycle jack, but these were fairly cheap at Harbor Freight. And you get a coupon. You're going to need this. You hear me? To lower that transmission, to get it back up in place, you're going to need a transmission jack. I'm sorry. Number 6, how long is this going to take? Number 6, how long is this going to take? 2 mechanics working on the vehicle. I think it took them 6 hours together. By yourself, one of them said, on your back, it'll take a week. He was exactly right. Number 7. Finally, I get everything disassembled. And I did not have to disconnect my shift cable. There wasn't enough play in the shift cable. Once I got my bell housing bolts off and got my engine mount out, my transmission mount out the way, got the transfer case down, I was able to slide my transmission back just enough, about that much, where I can get the bolts off the plate and get my flex plate bolts off, and just enough room. And while I was doing that, I went ahead and changed out my oil pressure regulator at the top. Just replaced it. Got my O-ring on, got my gasket on, and I cleaned everything up and put all the new parts on it, tightened everything back down, putting everything back together, and getting the transmission bolted back up, getting the bell housing bolts on, putting my transfer case back, getting my transmission mount back on, getting my exhaust system back up into place, planning my work and working my plan. And once I started that engine, I wanted to make sure nothing was leaking. I ran into a few problems, but they were corrected. There were actually 7 things I did before replacing my rear main seal.